My friends, I'm here live with Elizabeth Ashley, and this is, I think, our third dialogue, and I'm very much looking forward to it. But before we just jump right in, I need to do one thing over on Instagram so that we go live here. I have to click one more button. Uh, there we go. Okay, so here we are. All right, Elizabeth Ashley. Elizabeth, I want to say a little bit about you, and then you can add in any more that you want, and we'll jump right into the dialogue. So Elizabeth Ashley and I had I won't even say how we ended up meeting, it's so cool. I think we talked about it in our first video that we did together. But what I do wanna say, she has a robust YouTube channel called The Secret Healer,
Yeah.
correct?
hmm
And she's an author of over 40 books, 25
No,
books?
24 books.
24, I was close! 24 books on the topics of, uh, essential oils, plants, uh, some things witchy.
Melisai, which are bee priestesses.
Beautiful, thank you. I have tremendous respect for this woman. I'm just getting to know her in real time every time we do one of these dialogues, and I always learn so much, not just from what you say, but also from how you are.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
yeah, and yeah, you're a sassy, spicy one, and I just love it.
Yes, those are good descriptions of me, I think.
Yeah,
And
you
I
know,
have to say, I'm so looking forward to this today. But I have such respect for the way that you really tune into the oils because it's such a rare thing to really have time to sit with somebody who doesn't just say, "I'm just relying on a textbook," but really
right.
feels way into it. And I was really excited when you told me what the title of today's meeting would be because I was like, Helichrysum and Coherence. I don't see it like that at all. I have not gone through that door at all. So I'm really looking forward to this because it's going to feel like a massive initiation, I feel like.
Ooh, yes, I'm sure for both of us. Wow. Gosh, I so appreciate your honesty about this. The normal way is that yeah, we just don't normally operate this way, and especially with between women, we kind of try to find our points where we both totally agree. And what you're saying is like, "Oh, I don't see it that way, but I wanna see what's here for me because
Yeah,
of
so
us."
this is a very Melissa thing. So the Melissae were the priestesses of of Demeter core in ancient Greece, and it's deliberate that I have my honeycomb behind me
Mm.
because when bees go out, they collect all their honey. And have you ever been in a beehive? Have you ever looked in a bee frame?
I've looked in one, yes.
Okay, so they're tremendous filers. They file things all over the place. So they've got like an area where the babies are, the brood are. They've got an area where the honey is, and then they have this comb which is full of pollen, which they've stored away to feed everybody. But what they do is they file it into colours and to plants.
Wow.
So they all come in and they're like, okay, and you'll open it up and you'll be like, oh, there's a purple one here, there's a bright yellow one here, there's a white one. And if you sit outside the hive, you can go, oh look, this hive is all getting lavender honey pollen. This hive is all getting ivy pollen because you can see the colours. And I really see my practice as that as like I have really done a lot of work in that hexagon, but I can
Mhm.
see that you're in a different hexagon, and I really want to be able to taste that hexagon. I need you to show me how to. The bees do like a waggle dance that's
Right.
all you to say, right, we got to go this way to this plant. So yeah, waggle dance me.
Oh, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. Oh, this is the best. Okay, so what I thought, and I'm just so open to see what wants to come through both of us, but because in within the Lumina Guild, which is this beautiful guild in the digital sphere that I have created with my co-founder over this last year, the guild is basically a place where we humans who are interested in what's coming next and interested in co-creating that together with others, where we can come together and really remember who we are and remember what's of true value and how what it looks like when we operate with one another under our chosen true values that we embody. So within the Lumina Guild, the structure that we have for contemplation is that each month there's a facet. And the facet is sort of like if you were to look at a gym, there's when a gym is cut, there's facets to the gym so that it looks more brilliant. Because by the way, I just have to insert here that when we first started going to Sri Lanka apparently has more gyms in the earth than any other place on earth. That's what's boasted anyway. And we would be traveling along and through, places out in the middle of nowhere, and we'd stop because there was something interesting going on. All these people sort of hovered around a hole in the earth, and they were pulling stones out of the
Yeah.
earth, and somebody just piled some right in my hand, and I look and to me, it just looks like I'm looking at rocks, actually. They didn't look precious. And then the guy looks at them and he pulls one out. They take it to someone who polishes it up and then starts to, there's probably a technical word for it, I don't know, but starts to make the cuts.
Mhm.
And this thing that looked like previously a rock, where I really couldn't see all of the beauty in it, then became something quite beautiful and extraordinary.
Yeah.
So the facets are basically the windows in to an orientation around value. And I'm going to read the facet for this month in the Lumina Guild, and then we're going to find our way with what Helichrysum wants to share in relationship to the facet.
Brilliant.
So the facet this month is the facet of coherence. The paired plant ally is Helichrysum. So coherence is the frequency that magnetizes right timing, relationships, and opportunities without force. And another way of saying that is it is so I am a coherent being when nothing within me is fighting. So when my words match the way the energy is moving in my body, matches the way my mental body is operating, matches the way my emotional body is operating. There's nothing hidden. There's only that which is revealed through the conversation or through the creation. So starting with that, Um, we'll just okay, Elizabeth, I'm just gonna say, here's that. I'm setting it right here in this little, what do you call it, hexagon? In this
In
hexagon?
the hexagon, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna set that in this hexagon just to be there. We don't need to overly think about it. It'll just influence. And then let's just kick it off with how do you think about Helichrysum? Just riff. Just be with it. Share anything you want. Beautiful.
Helichrysum, for me, is for the wound that will not heal. So, definitely on a physical level, I remember I had a really bad accident the one day. This says a lot about my family. This does. My husband doesn't get moved by anything at all. And I was outside, and I made an accident. We'd only just moved into the house, and we hadn't really surveyed very much. And I stood on what I thought was a secure slab, and the slab broke, and underneath it was a drain, and I hadn't realised that. And as the slab broke, the drain went. My leg went through the slab, through the drain, and the drain and the slab shut back on my leg. So I'm outside shouting, "Somebody help me! Somebody help me!" And my husband's going, "Oh, don't make such a fuss." And then even he came out and went, "Whoa!" And the mess that was on my leg was phenomenal. The bruising, the cuts, and I just thought, "Gosh, what am I going to put on here?" And I thought, right, some Helichrysum in some calendula carrier oil. Get it on, get it on. And the next day, I was like, "Well, that's not anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be." And the wound healed so quickly. And I thought, well, that's phenomenal to me. That is what you find in the textbooks, right? But then one of the things that kicks off my writing is there will be something, I'll read something somewhere and I'll think, that just seems wrong, or I become obsessed by things. And Kurt Schnellbaut had written that, well, how come the everybody's got the Helichrysum and knows how amazing it is, but nobody had ever heard of it before the 1990s, and it's not in any textbook. And I was like, no, I'm not accepting that as truth. But as I looked, I was like, no, he's right. It's not in any textbook. Where's it gone from? So I sat down because my books take the latest clinical evidence from the labs, but also go right back into the earliest mentions of history. And I was like, oh, there's no way nobody's talked about this amazing plant before. So I went right back into all of the sort of ancient Greek things, and I found a passage that Dioscorides had written, and he was talking about it called Helichrysum. And he was talking, and he said that Helichrysum is also called the amaranth and is sacred to Artemis, and that in ancient Greece they would give it um, to the warriors who'd come back successful, or those who had not, who came back from battle. So those who
Wow.
had come back successful from battle would have a statue made of them, and they would put a wreath on their head and around their neck of these beautiful flowers, because everlasting flowers, right? So they keep their beautiful color and their scent even though they've dried. But then those that didn't come back from battle, those that went into tombs, also had this wreath.
Oh,
And if you go
wow.
to places like the British Library, I was like, I need to find. And yeah, easy to find once you know what you're looking for. There's these beautiful necklaces still on the mummies, especially from Hawara in Rome, the Roman Hawara mummies, that they still are beautiful little yellow flowers, still smell, and got little earrings. And this is because it's the
Wow.
everlasting flower, so that they are everlasting. And as I studied it more and more, was looking, and I was saying, well, medical astrology, it falls under the rulership of the sun. In fact, it must, because Heli means sun.
Mm.
Chrison is the chrism is to be anointed, so the oil of the sun. I thought, but also there's another
Mm.
sort of rulership, surely, which couldn't come in um, ancient herbals, because nobody had discovered this planet, and this planet was Chiron.
Oh,
So the more I thought about astrologica, I was thinking that this really comes into Chiron for me. So can I read
yeah.
a passage from my book to explain my thinking at the time? Is that all right?
I think that's great.
So it said it's very hard not to see Chiron's medicine as bad. And without doubt, getting your leg blown off by a landmine or being smashed to bits in an RTC cannot be construed in any other way. To do so would be glib. And it says, please don't take this as a prediction of what's going to happen to you. I'm using sweeping generalizations to illustrate a point. Everyone's lesson will be different. But there is something in the quietness and isolation for many people that allows a little voice inside to say, I flipping hated that job anyway, and start to chuckle at the irony that perhaps the hell they were living may be easier to walk away from them after all. I may have said this before because it's something I believe to me, the very core of me now. Regular readers will know I started to write because I had been ill with a blood clot in my lungs, and I had to find something to make ends meet. And it just happened that somebody wanted a person who knew a bit about aromatherapy to write some notes for them. And the rest, as they say, is history. I make light of how hard up we were, but in truth, we sold our house on the day it was due to be repossessed, thanks to the mortgage company's solicitor holding the foreclosure off. And they were dark times. And yet, both my husband and I feel it was the greatest gift we have ever been given, because it was so freeing to
Mm.
know that even when we had lost everything, we were still here. We still had each other, and Goddess knows how we ended up living in a nicer place, but we did, and we had our health back. And it was terrifying, and yet it brought us peace. The scar is there though, and I feel sick to the stomach when I see someone struggling for cash. I rarely pass someone sleeping on the streets without fetching them a sandwich or something warm to eat, because to the core of me, I radiate gratitude that I have moved to a better place. And I understand their fear and confusion, whilst I've never, sorry, turning the page, whilst I've never slept rough. I thank Goddess that it was only through her grace that I was spared it. And likewise, I feel fury to the pit of my stomach when I hear someone deride the beaten wife who's never yet had the courage to leave. Their staying doesn't make sense. Unless you've been that woman, you can
Mm,
never understand every other road leads to hell. So paralysed in fear you remain. And unless you've stood in that woman's broken stilettos, there's no possible way you can understand her pain. You might sympathise, but you can never empathise. In the beautiful words of Jessica Garfield Kabar, it's through the wisdom of experience that it becomes a living prayer. The poison becomes a gift.
mm,
When I meditated on Helichrysum, I picked up a vibration that I recognised. It was an emotion that resonated painfully, that I knew and understood, but I was aware was not part of me. It was familiar and yet not my own. I identified it as a very uneasy guilt. I sensed something very similar with Jupiter ruled oils like holy basil quite often. It seemed to speak of being in a position of authority and a dreadful burden of sending a generation of children off to war. I kept thinking of what it must have been like to be someone like Winston Churchill and to have a whole country's expectations on your shoulders. Live day to day with the paradox of having all those young lives on your conscience and to know that it was a necessary evil to achieve your completely moral objective. It reminded me of watching Benedict Cumberbatch portraying Alan Turing in The Imitation Game. There's a dreadful scene where they've cracked the Enigma code, which means they know which ship the Germans are going to attack. And indeed, we find the awful truth that one of their team had a brother on that ship, and they realise that they must not save it. To do so would signal the enemy their secrets had been uncovered, and instead they create this dark mathematical formula to calculate which ships to save and allow the ones to perish as a means to give the Allies just enough advantage to win the war. My heart broke when I watched that film for many, many reasons, and it will leave a lasting imprint. It seemed like the dreadful blackness of Jupiter and the downside of playing your advantage. But now I see it's not Jupiter, it's Chiron, and the synchronicity
mm,
makes me shake to the core. For the guilt is not of the commander that I had envisaged, but that of the trainer, of the centaur whose destiny it was to train those heroes in the skills they need to take on their own destinies, and then to wait at home and to simply hope that it has been enough. Because if you look at them, the quests of the heroes were no less than those of our soldiers today. Their encounters are the same that haunt our 21st century nightmares. Jason had the responsibility of saving the entire Minoan civilization on his shoulders when he set off to find the Golden Fleece. Which atrocities, I wonder, did Chiron fear the most for him? Gorgons with serpent heads, three-headed dogs guarding the gates of hell, or that he might end up skewered in some muddy trench. And as he coaxed his proteges, I wonder how many nights did he remain awake, wondering if he'd done enough, if there might have been a way that he could have taken their place. How many times had he wished there was a way that he could have taken their places and spared them their own destinies? How hard was it, I wonder, to know that it was his lot, and rather than rail against it, to accept it and find a way to bear it. And so the way that I see Helichrysum is that awful things happen to people. And they are things, and sometimes they'll just be like your birthright. So, for example, if somebody had been born a twin, then that will echo right the way through their life and they can't do anything about it. And in the same way, somebody might have, for example, a stillborn child and you don't ever heal from it. It
mm,
can't heal, it's impossible for it to heal.
mm,
And it's like those Japanese cups where somehow
mhm,
they put it together and they weave the gold through it. And to
mhm,
me, that's what Helichrysum is. It's like you have this destiny and you have to live with that destiny. And that destiny becomes this huge, like onerous thing. And Helichrysum really understands that, I think.
mm. Let me just feel for a moment. That was a lot that just came. Yeah. Okay, I think where I'll go is I'm going to share a little bit. I'm going to permission myself to transmit a bit around my understanding of Helichrysum.
I
And
love that.
then I think what will naturally happen is we'll both feel for these places where there's touch points and maybe the questions that I prepared will come into play. I don't know. We'll see what happens. For the listeners, I sent Elizabeth just a little bit before got on. I sent her this list of 8 or 9 questions that I prepared, and we got on backstage before I hit record. I said, "What do you think of those questions?" She's like, "It's not how I think of Hillary."
Yeah,
All
this
right.
is when you should do your homework earlier than 5 minutes
No,
before you got
I mean, I designed the questions to be, like, not ones that the intellect can answer
Yeah,
alone. You have to
yeah,
approach it from a place of sort of not already knowing, but letting all the wisdom that you
yeah.
have
And
about something be there.
I have this like real. This is coming through to me more and more lately that essential oils are not miraculous, right? The people who work with essential oils are miraculous. And it's a bit like playing the piano, that some people can play chopsticks, some people can play Beethoven, and then sometimes somebody can sit down, like once in your life, you might be lucky enough to see somebody play the piano, and it's just like, I saw God. And you've got like this piano in the back room that's like a baby, like a, the old things in from the pub, or you've got like a baby grand or a Steinway. The person that can only play chopsticks can sit at the Steinway, but they can't. It's not the instrument that's the genius, right? And
Mm,
so I think that, there's so many different ways to work with oils, and everybody's reality is really quite different when we come
mm,
this way. And so
mm.
as long as you
It's
can
true.
find a way into somebody's way of thinking, then you're like,
Mm,
oh, okay, I get it. Yeah. So that's what I'm really looking forward to off you. That way
mhm,
in.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, that's well said. Okay, so I, uh I was just speaking about Helichrysum in this workshop that I was facilitating on Saturday, and then also actually, there was 2 events that I did on Saturday, one in person and one virtual, and we were focusing on Helichrysum, and I was in real time also receiving new or the next, uh, viewpoint that was becoming revealed to me as I was sort of communing with Helichrysum in real time, and I'm gonna describe some of that, but I wanna anchor it in something very tangible first, just so people can settle in their body, and this is connected to the helichrysum and trauma. That helichrysum is, I consider, one of the most powerful trauma oils that there is, and it's for physical trauma, like actual it regenerates tissue. Like, if you put I have so many stories, but the first one that's coming to mind is just so people can know what I'm talking about. We had at one point, this was many, many years ago, there was a little baby over at our house, a friend, and I mean, the baby was uh, maybe 10, 12 months old. I can't quite remember now, not walking. And they were on the couch, and I don't know exactly what happened, but the baby rolled off. We didn't catch it, and their head went right onto we had tile floor.
Oh,
And I mean, you heard the sound just made you cringe, and as soon as the mama picked up the baby, there was already what do they call it, a goose egg, like,
yeah. Oh,
it was already raised, and, so I took and I have enough medical training to know how to track if we needed to take the infant to the hospital. I was tracking for those signs. Meanwhile, I also put and I don't normally recommend this for babies, undiluted helichrysum, but this was a pretty extreme circumstance. It was a very pure undiluted helichrysum. I put it directly on And then we're just monitoring the infant, put it on again about 15 minutes later, monitoring. I think we probably did 3 or 4 applications before she left, and we determined the baby was actually okay, but was probably gonna have this big bruise the next day, right? She sent me a picture of the baby's head the next morning. There was actually no bruise. You could not tell that the injury had happened. There was one tiny, tiny little, almost imperceptible scratch that was there. But that is, miraculous,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah, yeah,
That is
yeah,
completely miraculous.
for sure.
So this dissolving of congealed blood, which is part of what it does, this regeneration of tissue, and how I see it from a, we could say, metaphysical perspective, is that it's activating and engendering and sort of holding the field of wholeness, of completeness, of healedness, so that in time and space, the human who's experienced the injury can actually recover or regenerate very swiftly, directly in relationship to the already healed whole template. So so the paradox that we're holding here, because there is some measure of paradox here, is that from the Chiron perspective, we can have wounds that never heal. And from the perspective of Helichrysum, always forever shining this light down, we all have an already whole, always whole template. Sometimes I call it divine blueprint that's forever shining down upon us. And both are true. We have our wounds that we've accumulated perhaps in this lifetime and many lifetimes, and some of which will never be fully resolved. There'll always be scar tissue. There'll always be some remembrance of that there. And yet we can stream in or connect into both simultaneously this fully whole template of who we are. In that way, I'm going to bring in another little bridge here. I think of Christ consciousness quite a lot with Helichrysum, and I think you even tied a little bit of that in. But how I relate to Christ consciousness here, it's in two ways. One is that for me, in my own journey with the story of Christ, from being raised by hippie parents who had my astrological chart done when I was born on the kitchen floor of our home, to then they converted to fundamentalist Christians when I was 4 or 5, and I was indoctrinated into that teaching, that particular Christian teaching of Christ, and then leaving all that behind when I was 13 because it didn't make sense to me. What has really stuck with me about Christ is that he was a radical rebel who was saying, the kingdom of heaven is within you. And
Mhm,
and that the way that his miracles were performed were because he was looking through the eyes of wholeness at the person that was before them. He couldn't see, he wasn't, I don't know if it's quite accurate to say he wasn't acknowledging the illness, because it wasn't an emotional thing. But if you see through the eyes of wholeness, then what regenerates or what arises before you is that wholeness, because we do get what we really are looking for. And so if Helichrysum can remind us and guide us into seeing and looking through the eyes of wholeness, then what we experience in our life is radically different than if we're looking through the eyes of the wound. Are you okay if I add one more thing before I pause and hand it
yeah,
over to you?
yeah, yeah.
Because I'm going to stretch a little bit and, yeah, and tie this into what's held over here about coherence that we set aside. So we can be wounded beings, meaning you've had wounds, I've had wounds. I have scars, you have scars. I think there isn't any human that's free from that. We can be a wounded human with whatever baggage it is that we have, on whatever soul developmental trajectory that we're on. And we can tune into the field of our always wholeness. And we can be informed by that field as we move forward. So we can actually be entrained into our wholeness, or we can focus on our fragmentation, we can focus on our wounding, and we can actually entrain ourselves into fragmentation, separation, pain. So coherence isn't about denying the pain or the wounds, but coherence is about choosing the more whole expression of you in any moment. And just to like bring this home into what that would feel like simply, it just feels like you're being you without having to shove anything aside or pretend that you're someone you're not. So again, you're not denying the wounds, but you're also not focusing on them so much that you're speaking through the wound. So when you're coherent, you're actually speaking through the whole that is you, with all of it there, without denying any part of it. We could say aligned, the aligned self, but for me, sometimes I really need a, a vibrational reminder that there is a coherent Tiffany that exists. So that's how I would say I see Helichrysum connecting to this idea of coherence and also
Yeah,
healing.
I see it the same and different. So when I was talking about this woman who's had a stillborn child, for example, to me, what happens is this person becomes the greatest healer and the most empathic person to help people who have stillborn children.
Mm,
And so that destiny becomes part of her evolution.
mhm,
And so so I how I find how I experience helichrysm and how I experience this blueprint that you're talking about, to me, that blueprint doesn't stay like a static blueprint.
mm,
It's evolving, and so I think that's what essentials are so good with, actually, because they are natural entities. They are evolving in real time in the same way that we are. But for somebody who has like this horrific trauma, as you say, this blueprint need not be the blueprint that looked like it did yesterday. It's
mm,
evolved into something far superior, and it helps that person to step into that. So I see it the same way in different way to you, I think. But
mm,
yeah, from the point of view that we integrate the trauma, and the trauma becomes something that makes us different but better. We have so I agree with what you said, that we don't look through the wound and become fragmented. And
mm,
from the point of view of, we don't let it sort of sit and fester. We say, well, okay, I've got to live with this and make the best of it.
mm,
And it really informs the future of, I didn't have that experience before. I couldn't do that piece of work with integrity. Now I really can, because I can speak from a point of experience. And sometimes that will be traumatic. Sometimes it will be like, well, okay, so I'll put it a different way. So
mm,
you're talking about Christ as like the kingdom of heaven is inside of you, right?
mhm,
So that's a very Gnostic teaching. And when we're talking about the Gnostic Gospels and what they believed at the same time as Christ, but as like the early church, but in sort of opposition to the early church, they were kind of heretics, if you like. They talked about how Jesus was like what's called an eon. So this came about because the monad, the one, was immanent, and he wanted to experience every experience there was of himself. And so by sort of meditating on what my experience of, because of course this immanent is everything and all times, meditating on, well, if I was a cat, for example, what would I look like, feel like, be like if I was a cat? But the first emanation was, he looked into the water, and what he saw actually was the divine feminine, which I think is absolutely delightful. A figure called Barbello. So the monad looks and is like, "What the hell? I'm female." It really makes me laugh every time I think about it. And she's this bounteous creature that brings forth nature. And then other eons come, and one of those is Jesus. That's a further on story. But this idea of, right, I want to reflect on every possible experience of myself is fascinating to me, and it does kind of fall into that helichrysm category, that if we are going through a new evolution of the soul, there will be times where in our evolution where, well, we have to experience things that are really awful. We have to know how it feels to do that to be able to evolve. And so helichrysm is very good at saying the crap stuff. You have to experience the crap stuff. Okay, let me help you with that. That's my job. I will
Mm,
help you through
mm,
that and
mm.
see how that evolves through your blueprint.
Yeah, that's clear. I think even if you just look at that on a physiological level, I'm just moving to the side so I can get my book because I want to read something that's connected to this. Uh, on the physiological level about how it speeds the recovery.
Yeah,
It
do
it
it.
speeds it speeds you through the recovery. It digests that blood that would have been congealed and stayed there for a while where, if
Yeah,
it's like I would say I mean, gosh, it just cuts down the bruise time by it's some exponential measure. Whereas if you didn't use it, then every day you would see that bruise when you looked at
yeah,
whatever it was.
yeah.
You would see it and go, "Oh, there's my owie," as my daughter would say, "Owie, owie." Okay, so there's something that you just said that okay, here we go. So, this is from my Inner Nature book. On the uh, at the level of the emotional body, Helichrysum has an astounding healing and regenerative influence as well, where you have been repeatedly bruised and battered by the circumstances of life. The inner nature of this potent ally ministers to the vibrational wound. Helichrysum facilitates lasting healing by helping you to experience yourself differently, as healed rather than forever broken, endlessly pursuing healing. The inner nature of this golden blooming plant supports the choice to change the belief in different stories about who you are, who others are, and about life's possibilities. Without resetting your narratives about the wound, you can never truly heal. The injurious story is kept open and the pain is kept alive. With ambery fullness, Helichrysum guides us to an embodied understanding that emanates beyond the wound. It helps to surpass the polarity dynamics of broken, not broken, wounded, and healed. Helichrysum reminds us that healing is what we do, that healed is who we are, and that the wound itself is an invitation to the choice for wholeness. That's the direct tie into coherence right there.
I love that.
Like an energetic skin graft, helichrysum can touch places that seem unable to heal and remind us that wholeness is our origin and our destiny. As much as you may perceive yourself as broken, in your truest form, you are also whole. One more paragraph. Helichrysum guides us into cosmic alignment with our always wholeness. With this, we can receive blueprints from our ever present higher self. Which also I like how you said it, that's a living, that's a dynamic, field. The inner nature of Helichrysum ministers to the aspects of us that have been fractured, hurt, bruised, or betrayed. It whispers into those places a story of resurrection and return to the glory of who we always have been and who we came here to be.
Yeah, I love it. Beautifully put. And I think we should be careful not to miss like one translation of the helichrysum, that yes, it's the everlasting flower, but it's such a fortifying plant right across the board.
Mm,
So yes, skin, but digestive, um, respiratory system. It's got all sorts of applications right across the board. But from a metaphysical point of view, it's about solidity. I just
mm,
feel stronger.
mm. Interesting. And it's interesting that's true, what you just said, and that it breaks down things that solidify that are directly connected to trauma.
Yeah, it's a
I mean, it's
ketones,
just an
isn't it?
interesting
Yeah,
paradox. I think it's
it is.
so
Yeah,
cool.
yeah,
It really,
yeah.
really is. Um, let me check. I'm going to look at the questions that I have. We'll have about maybe 5 or 6 more minutes. I'm going to see if there's anything that feels relevant to ask ourselves, and then we'll come into summary. So just see if there's anything, Elizabeth, that kind of rapid fire wants to come through you around this, and if it doesn't, say pass, okay?
Okay.
When you are with Helichrysum, what quality of presence does it invite you into?
The first time that really experienced it, when I went into proper trance with it, what I saw was a person in a corridor in a hospital, and that person was leaning against the hospital wall and their legs buckled. It was the moment of being absolutely, I'm defeated. I'm so overwhelmed, I don't know what to do. As if they got somebody ill in a bed, they were watching it. And I saw the spirit of Helichrysum come and sit down beside them and say, I know it's shit, but you will get through this, and this will become your superpower. And that would be the main presence that I feel when I feel Helichrysum.
Like a reassurance? Or
Like a
how,
stretcher, like a stretcher carrying them off the battlefield.
oh, wow, the quality. And so how would you describe that? How else would you describe, is it supportive? Is that what you're feeling into with that imagery? That it's supportive, that it's
Well,
rescuing?
yes, but supportive feels a bit airy fairy.
Mm,
It's like everything about Helichrysum, I always think in terms of battlefields and trauma and what have you. And it's like we're under fire and I'm being shot at, but I'm going back for that person and like dragging them across the field. It's
mm,
like I am in the midst of the trauma with you. This is my trauma with you. So not like
mm.
supportive from the point of view of I'm holding you. It's like I am dragging you through this because you have no power. I will do this for you.
Oh, wow, wow, okay. And then let's see, what would I say for that one? What quality of presence does it invite me into? I mean, if I speak very simply about the first thing that it invites me into pretty much every time I take in its fragrance is that I feel settled. So the quality of presence that Helichrysum invites me into is one of being settled in myself. I settle down, and when I'm settled, I am more present. There's a cohesive quality. I'm there with the person or with myself. I'm there behind my words, not scattered. Okay, one more question. Let's see what about this one. What do you feel Helichrysum offers people living in these what do you feel Helichrysum offers people living in these accelerated, uncertain times?
Recovery from trauma.
Mm,
And that seems like far fetched, but I think well, this week while we're filming, I would say that every person on the planet feels traumatized every single day right now, with all the
yeah,
revelations in the news.
yeah.
um and I think I think maybe that stabilizing quality, perhaps it's a closer match to your personality than it is to mine, maybe, because I think that sometimes you can really be like, I don't get that at all. It's like it's almost like you're a different star sign. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
But I think that everybody would go in amongst of all the trauma of God. These are hard, scary, spiteful times. The support of going, I will get you through it. Yeah.
mm, mm, mm. And then let's see, what do I feel Helichrysum offers people living in these accelerators? I think it offers people closure, a way of having healthy closure on a different way of being. Because I think I really am very much experiencing and aware of this, what many people call the paradigm shift. But there, we are in this, I call it the great flippening, where the way that we see and hold things is very there's an opportunity for it to be very different than what was before. Perhaps I say it's very different than what was before, but it's also a great remembering. Um,
Mm.
so, gosh, I lost my train of thought there. Living in these accelerated, uncertain times. Yeah, it offers people an opportunity to have, if they want it, an upgraded narrative about their own life journey. And that, and I don't mean that lightly, I mean it with a lot of depth, that the upgraded narrative itself then becomes part of what entrains us into the next stage of healing, or allows us to metabolize what's here to metabolize, or to resolve itself, so that we can experience ourselves as lighter as we move into this next stage of our lives. So,
I think that's absolutely bang on. I would agree completely with that
mm,
synopsis.
right on. Okay, well, let's end on that note. Let's see. Say a little bit about how people can find you. I'll also put some links in the show notes on YouTube.
Okay, so well, the best place to find me is on YouTube. If you go onto the search bar and put Elizabeth Ashley aromatherapy, you'll find me easily. But Elizabeth Ashley, the secret healer. You can obviously find me on Amazon, including my book about Helichrysum. And again, just look for Elizabeth Ashley. And my website is www.thesecrethealer.co.uk.
Brilliant. And stay tuned for Elizabeth and I plan to do at least one of these a month. And I'd like to keep going with that if you want to, Elizabeth. So
I love
stay
it.
tuned.
I love it. You got to come to me next time.
Okay, okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. And for anyone watching, check out the luminaguild.com. Actually, it's just luminaguild.com. And I think that's it. Let's end with that. Stay on for one sec, Elizabeth. I'm going to end the
I
live
just want to
video.
say a massive thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this, and I'm going to go away and write all of those notes down that you said to me then and go, right, okay, I'm going to work my way through it. Feel like I learnt loads today, Tiffany. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too. Thank you for everything you shared. Everything, everything. I so appreciate you. Okay. Ending stream.